After his beautiful twin sister gets brutally murdered by a bunch of hoodlums, Curo swears to get revenge. It took him 5 years, but he finally tracks them down one by one and wipes them out without mercy. But still, there's no peace in him, just emptiness, so he grabs the knife and stabs himself in the throat. But as he's dying, a voice comes out of nowhere and asks if wasting his life like this is really worth it. At that moment, the boy opens his eyes only to find himself in some huge place that looks like an old temple. He notices the wound on his neck is completely gone and remembers stabbing himself, but now there's not even a mark. He also realizes his jacket, wallet, and phone are missing, leaving him with nothing but the knife in his hand. Still, he tells himself it doesn't matter where he is, there's still something he has to do. As he tries stabbing himself the second time, the knife in his hand suddenly shatters, and just then a voice speaks to him, asking if he ever plans to stop. He looks up to see a pretty girl with big cute eyes walking down the stairs. She introduces herself as Shirou and explains that people from other worlds often get reincarnated here, so it's not unusual at all. She mentions that she also got reincarnated into this world, and then says she will be his guide. Upon hearing this, the protagonist grabs her by the hand, demanding to know if she knows his dead sister, Toa. Sometime later, Curo wakes to find Shirou staring down at him. She explains that he fainted, and since she couldn't just leave him there, she decided to bring him to where she stays. Looking around, Curo sees that this place looks like some kind of rundown bar, with everyone drinking and making merry. Shirou explains that the place doubles as both her workplace and her home. When Curo brings up the issue of his dead sister again, Shirou tells him that while he was unconscious, he kept mumbling her name. When Curo explains that Toa is his sister who passed away 5 years ago, Shirou immediately assumes Curo must think his sister has somehow reincarnated into this world. So she explains that there could be many people with the name Toa, and finding his sister in this world might be impossible or a wasted effort. Even so, Curo admits he still wants to find out. That's when Shirou says she knows 4 people with the name Toa spread across different nations. One's a witch called Toeri. Another is a magician named Toazu. Then there's a knight leader called Maitora, and lastly a hero named Toei Reitsu. Curo decides he wants to meet that last one first, Toei Reitsu, but Shirou warns it won't be easy. She says for him to understand, she needs to explain what a hero means. She says reincarnated people like them get something called a status adjustment, and this so-called status adjustment enables some to become strong fighters, others to become powerful magic users. Then the truly exceptional ones use these gifts to make significant contributions to the country. Those are the ones who become heroes and even get honored by the nation. Curo asks what kind of contribution she is talking about. Shirou replies that the simplest contribution to society is to conquer a dungeon. She lectures him that in this world there are dungeons filled with monsters, and by defeating a specific monster in a dungeon, you receive a power known as magic equipment. At first, Curo doesn't like the idea of facing demons inside a dungeon, but he agrees to go anyway. That's when Shirou hands him a special pair of contact lenses. When Curo puts them on, he suddenly starts seeing strange text and numbers floating everywhere, almost like a game interface. Shirou explains it's called a direct glasses device, which shows stats, skills, and even information about other people. Then she asks him to silently think about showing his own status and information. When Curo does this, he sees his own stats for the first time, and they're surprisingly high for a beginner. But among his skills, something dark catches his eye, a black magic attribute and a curse called a sinful deed that corrupts the mind. Shirou warns him that conquering dungeons is no joke, and death is still very much possible. She asks if he still stubbornly wants to go, but Curo doesn't back down and decides right there that he'll use this second chance to do one thing: find his sister. With that, they visit the magic equipment shop, where Curo brings up his strange black magic attribute. Since Shirou has no idea what it is, she suggests the best way to find out is by asking the store manager. But before they can, the bald store manager suddenly grabs them by the shoulders and starts teasing Shirou about finally finding a man. The Megamind ripoff introduces himself as Shirou, and then quickly explains that the shop offers special sheets of artificial magic equipment that can grant skills if put on the tongue. At first, Curo looks doubtful, but Shirou convinces him to give it a try. He leads them over to the training area, where Curo swallows the sheets one by one. Then the store manager instructs him to start off with wind magic once the magic formula pops up in his head. Curo thinks about the spell, and once the formula pops up, he recites it, and instantly, a sudden burst of air swirls around him. At the end of the magic practical session, Shirou mentions that he doesn't really know much about Curo's black magic attribute, but promises to let him know if he ever finds out anything. With that, they head out shopping afterward, and while walking through town, Shirou suddenly panics when she remembers that she forgot to buy something for someone, so she rushes off to get it. As Curo stands there, a girl with weird-looking eyes walks up to him, asking if he is the visitor who just arrived the day before. Curo immediately notices her unusual eyes, and when he asks who she is, the girl tells him to go ahead and inspect her. Curo checks her stats and realizes that her name is Quenti, and she's a level 41 hero with insane stats. Curo is stunned, wondering if she might be connected somehow to the hero, Toei Reitsu, that he's searching for. Before Curo can ask about her hero status, Shirou returns, apologizing for the wait. Curo says it's perfect timing, and just as he is about to introduce her to the hero he just met, he notices that Quenti has somehow vanished into thin air. The following day, they head to the entrance of the dungeon and then leap into the depths. On getting inside the dungeon, Curo spots his first monster in this world. At first, it looks like some weird, cute round thing with one giant eye, but the moment this freak opens its mouth, rows of sharp teeth show, and it lunges straight at him. Curo immediately slashes it down, but before he can relax, Shirou announces that there's more coming their way. The cave starts rumbling, and that's when the next wave shows up. Our boy is thinking what kind of ugly-looking monsters these are, with distorted masks for faces. But whatever, he immediately switches to magic, shouting out his spell and freezing them solid on his first try. Shirou is impressed, but then the ground shakes again, and out of the darkness, a whole army of nasty monsters. Beastmen, golems, and who knows what else, all glaring down at them. It's a proper dungeon fight now, and both of them are ready to take it on. Shirou is launching her daggers while pointing out the massive number of monsters in the dungeon that day. She notices Curo heading deeper into the dark and warns him that it's especially dangerous where he's heading. But she is taken aback when she sees Curo using endowment magic on his sword to make it sharper and also increase its endurance. With his sword reinforced, our boy goes on a full rampage, slicing off the heads of every monster there like it's Fruit Ninja Reloaded. Shirou, on the other hand, watches from behind, amazed by the way he fights like a man possessed. Once the dust settles, the dungeon floor is littered with defeated monsters. Shirou, curious about his skill, asks if Curo was some kind of soldier in his previous life. But Curo shrugs it off, saying he was more of a hoodlum, but inside, he admits he's surprised at how well he handled himself. Suddenly, glowing words appear before his eyes and his stats level up. Especially his magic power, and Curo realizes he's learning more and more about how this world actually works. Later, they make it to the 4th floor, and Shirou suggests calling it quits since they've gone deeper than expected for a first try. But the protagonist says nope, insisting he's not done yet. Even though Shirou warns him that most people can't keep up this pace, he insists on going further. Shirou sighs, noting she's never guided anyone as relentless as him. She pauses to rest for a moment, but her body shows signs of fatigue. So our boy quickly carries her up like a Disney princess and asks if she's all right. Shirou blushes furiously, embarrassed at how close he is, and wonders what the heck is even going on. Curo apologizes, admitting he was too focused on himself and forgot about her stamina. Shirou insists she can walk just fine, but he carries her anyway, pointing out how her face looks redder than a spicy ramen. Just then, the walls of the cave rumble, and Shirou figures it must be the other party that entered the dungeon before them. When Curo asks if that means the group is fighting below them, Shirou replies that she has no idea and then starts heading toward the direction of the rumble. Curo, however, takes her hand firmly and tells her this is him being selfish. He can't allow her to get caught in danger, so he won't let her go ahead alone. Curo admits he wasn't a good person back in his old world, and he isn't trying to become one here. But he'll still do what he thinks is right, and right now that means protecting her. Shirou, seeing how serious the guy is, agrees he go with her, but then warns him to follow every of her instructions. Together they go down the 6th floor, and that's where they suddenly stumble on a charred body lying on the ground, burnt to death. The sight makes them freeze, but before they can even process what's going on, they see a terrifying beast looming in the distance. Shirou immediately recognizes this beast to be the crescent Memehasu, and then tells Curo how bad the situation they are in looks. She also tells him that this terrifying creature is none other than the monster that holds the powerful magic tool. But then Curo sees something crazy that throws him off. He notices that the ones actually fighting this bestial freak of nature are brats that are supposed to be in school. Curo's shocked, wondering what's going on, but then an ugly nobleman steps out. Turns out those brats aren't adventurers at all, they're his slaves. The noble is using them as tools to defeat the monster, and then raise his reputation by obtaining the magic tool. It's messed up because even though the brats are terrified, they have no choice but to obey. One of the brats charges forward with a sword, but the monster swats him away like a useless fly. The noble just screams at the other one to hurry up and use her magic, not caring if she dies, just so long as it distracts the beast. The poor girl is shaking but still moves in front of the beast, forced to cast her spell. Just as the monster is about to crush her into nothingness, Curo slices off one of the beast's hands and rescues the girl. As the beast roars in pain, Curo immediately suggests they leave. But before they can even think of it, the monster hurls a massive inferno their way, which they dodge at the very last moment. Curo realizes that slicing off the monster's hand only pissed it off, and running away isn't an option anymore. So he steps forward, knowing that if they can't escape, their only option will be to defeat it. Straight away, Curo unleashes his spells, firing ice shards and torrents, but the beast chests them like it's nothing. To make matters worse, the beast's sliced-off hand starts regenerating before his very eyes. That's when Curo finally understands this thing isn't normal. It's special, just like Shirou warned. Just then, the ugly mop-head noble shows up again, getting in Curo's face and whining about him stealing his achievement. He starts puffing his chest about being the son of some important noble family. But before he can finish bragging, the monster whips out its spiky weapon and slams into him, turning him into a meat frisbee. Curo, on the other hand, manages to evade the deadly strike and notices how the monster reacts instantly to anything in sight, leaving no obvious openings. He thinks if he can slip into its blind spot, maybe he can land a clean strike. So he jumps in, aiming for its neck. But the monster isn't dumb. It whips around fast and smacks him with its massive weapon, sending him crashing hard into the ground. Shirou shouts his name in panic as the beast closes in to finish off the boy. The protagonist suddenly finds himself in this strange white space, floating around like he's half awake. He's confused, wondering where he is and what he's even doing there. That's when he sees his dead sister, Toa, and he can't understand why she's just standing there. When she gets closer, he sees that she's crying, which makes his heart beat fast. He tries to talk to her, but then she starts drifting further away, slipping out of reach. Curo panics, reaching out his hand, calling her name again and again, but she just fades away from him. Suddenly, everything snaps back. Curo opens his eyes and realizes it was just a cruel dream. Reality smacks him in the face, and he realizes he's still badly injured, crushed by the blow he took from that magic tool holder. Even with all the reincarnation adjustments he's been given, his body is a wreck. But at that moment, he sees the beast pick up the nobleman's corpse and straight up eat him like a snack. Then it laughs like the devil, calling it delicious. The monster starts walking towards him, and Curo figures he is next to get chewed like cheap gum. Even though he can't move properly and his magic power is nearly drained, Curo refuses to give in. But right before the monster can even make a move, a blade stabs its eyes, forcing it to roar in pain. Of course, it's Shirou, who jumps in at the last second, saving him from certain death. Curo can hardly believe she saved him, but Shirou tells him not to move and uses her magic to heal his wounds. She admits she can only patch him up for now, but reassures him she already hid the little girl from earlier on a higher floor. The plan now is to escape as soon as Curo can move again. But Curo yells for her to leave immediately. He tells her she doesn't have to stay, that she's done enough already as the guide. But Shirou refuses to leave, saying it would be a waste if she abandoned him now. She tells him this world, Arculia, is a place where people can change for the better. She's seen others with eyes like his, and even they manage to find normal, happy lives here. So she wants him to do the same. She wants him to live and be happy too. Curo is moved by her words until he suddenly sees the monster approaching. He yells for Shirou to move, but too late. The beast smacks her hard, leaving her badly injured. Panicking, Curo forces his broken body to move thanks to Shirou's earlier healing, but he knows he's in trouble since he doesn't even have a sword left. He is thinking how he's going to grab Shirou and escape. That's when his system alerts him to a message from Shirou, the hairless guy from the magic equipment store. According to the message, Shirou found a description of the black attribute in an ancient book. The book says the black attribute is an ability that combines everything and converts it into power for the user. After reading the message, Curo finally understands the mystery behind his strange powers. With that, he slowly rises back up, remembering he still has a lot he needs to do. For the first time, instead of wishing for death, the protagonist feels like he actually wants to live. At that moment, he activates his black attribute, and the ground beneath him twists and darkens, forming spikes of black energy. The monster glares at him, ready for more, while Shirou watches in shock, realizing the boy is finally beginning to tap into the true form of his color attribute. Now, with the power of the Annex, which allows the user to gather the darkness and govern it, Curo is able to tap into this new power called darkness unification. With this, his whole body gets covered in black energy that shapes into armor. At the same time, another skill called Dark Authority activates, and it loads him up with new abilities like Dark Eater and Black Funeral. Watching from the side, Shirou sees his new armor and practically freezes in fear, since the guy now looks like some Dark Vader knockoff. But since she's out of danger for the moment, Curo decides he can fight without holding anything back. So he uses Black Funeral, and these spikes of darkness shoot up from the ground, tearing into the monster and causing it to roar in pain. What's crazy is that even in pain, the monster is still able to use healing magic. Not bothered, Curo smirks and says he's got another surprise. He shapes a sword out of pure darkness and swings it with brutal force, blasting the monster back and shaking the battlefield. The beast tries to counter by firing his spikes, but Curo's new power just swallows them completely like it's nothing. Then, out of nowhere, Curo unleashes a flurry of rapid blade strikes, slicing through the monster's limbs and dicing them up like raw beef. To finish it off, the protagonist launches his strongest move, Dark Eater, and darkness swallows every chopped-up piece of the monster, stopping any chance of regeneration. Just then, his system confirms the presence of a magic tool and requests permission to commence acquisition. Looking at his hand, Curo sees a ring and wonders if this is the magic tool. He thinks maybe having this ring will be enough to finally get closer to the heroes he's been chasing. With the monster defeated, Shirou and the little girl they rescued finally come out of hiding. The little girl, terrified and shaking, then steps forward begging Curo to make her his slave. She's desperate, listing all the things she can do: clean, cook, take care of animals, and even use some magic. She's so desperate to survive that she says she'll do just anything. But she's also so exhausted that she collapses right after saying all that, and luckily, Shirou catches her in her arms. When Curo asks what they should do with the girl, Shirou admits she isn't sure, but explains that since her owner died, her status might transfer to relatives, though maybe there's a way to nullify or postpone that. Curo replies that since they've already gotten involved, they'll do what they can. Shirou smiles, saying she's starting to get a sense of what kind of person he really is. So with that, they decide to head back first and think about what to do later. A few days later, far to the north in a snowy region, another battle has just ended. A huge beast lies frozen and defeated, and one fighter mentions how it took longer than expected to deal with. Then the talk shifts to a rumor. Apparently, near the capital, a newcomer managed to defeat a magic tool holder. One of them wonders about this newcomer, joking that they hope it's a girl, because guys are just savages. The other laughs and replies they figured they'd say something like that, before casually calling her by her name. Toa. Meanwhile, back at the bar, the rescued girl is sleeping peacefully, softly snoring under the blankets. Curo sits nearby, watching over her and thinking. Saving this one person gives him a reason to feel like his second chance at life actually has value. Later at the bar, the place is so lively, as everyone is drinking and chatting. Shirou comes over to tease Curo, asking why he isn't drinking. But since Curo hates the smell of alcohol, he just thanks him instead, saying they managed to survive the dungeon thanks to his message. While Shirou keeps talking, Curo notices Shirou looks tired, so he picks her up in his arms right there in front of everyone, saying she deserves to rest. The whole place goes silent and the moment gets painfully awkward. Embarrassed, Shirou smacks him on the head for doing something so embarrassing in public. The mood lightens again, and some of the locals start commenting that Curo really does seem like an earnest kind of person. For Curo, sitting there in that noisy, warm atmosphere feels strangely nostalgic, making him remember when his sister was still alive. Just then, a tall, busty girl walks up to Curo and starts gossiping about Shirou. She says that even though Shirou looks popular, she's still lonely. She introduces herself as Vinny, saying she's heard a lot about him from Shirou. She also tells Curo that the ceremony for the magic tool offering will be in 1 week's time and offers to answer any questions he might have. After thinking briefly, Curo says he'd like to know what kind of person Shirou is. This amuses Vinny, who teases him for being interested in her. Nevertheless, she tells him that if he really wants to know more about Shirou, it would be best to ask her directly. Speaking of the devil, Shirou interrupts, calling for Curo to come take a look at something. When Curo approaches, Shirou asks the rescued girl to come out. The girl steps forward, clean and wearing a beautiful dress, leaving Curo speechless. He's stunned to see that the dirty slave girl now looks completely different. Earlier, Curo and Shirou had met with the head of the noble family and secured full ownership of the girl. It was explained that the foolish, now-dead noble who dragged them into the dungeon did it without his father's consent. After acquiring the girl, Curo asks her name, and she replies that it's Econa. Curo nods and informs her that starting that day, she'll be working in the pub. The girl, Econa, is shocked brainless, asking him what the heck he is talking about. She is even more shocked when Curo tells her that he has no intention of making her a slave and instead wants them to be buddies. Econa can't believe this is true and insists she is a slave. She tells him that her parents were murdered in front of her and then burst into tears, saying she doesn't know what else to do. Curo tells her they'll figure it out together and asks if she thinks she can work at the pub. Econa replies that she can and promises to do her best. When Curo reminds her that they're friends now, Econa blushes hard and smiles. Suddenly, there's a loud bang on the door. A man stumbles into the bar, badly beaten and on the verge of death. Everyone shouts his name, Taiga, and rushes to get him medical attention. The dude has blood all over his face and body, which immediately catches Curo's attention, so he asks Shirou who the guy is. Shirou explains that Taiga is a well-known raider who often hangs around the place. She says he and his team had gone into the dungeon to take on the Guardian. The problem is, he's the only one who made it back alive, which means his entire party was likely wiped out. When Curo asks who this Guardian is, Shirou explains that a Guardian is a magic tool holder found in the deepest part of the evil area. Hearing this, Curo immediately thinks the Guardian must be the same kind of terrifying beast he fought days ago. After catching his breath, Taiga starts explaining what happened. He says they were foolish to think they could ever challenge the Guardian. He further explains that when they first encountered it, it looked at them with this creepy grin, licked its lips, and instead of just terminating them right away, it played with them like toys. This Guardian is called Sagurusu, and according to Taiga, it's a brutal monster. One adventurer listening asks why Taiga alone survived and demands to know what happened to his comrades. Horrified, Taiga admits the Guardian unalived every one of them right in front of him. To make things worse, it grabbed a girl named Curara and disappeared into the darkness. Just retelling it makes Taiga desperate. He begs for healing magic, shouting that he's going back into the dungeon no matter what. The others are shocked, warning him it's far too dangerous. Even if his wounds are healed, his magic power won't recover that quickly. But Taiga doesn't care. He insists he has to return because Curara and the bodies of his fallen comrades are still in there. Trembling, he says even if it costs him his life, he will face the beast again. Everyone looks uneasy, but Curo, seeing the weight of Taiga's loss and the determination in his voice, says he will go with him. Shirou is shocked, wondering what nonsense the guy is saying, but Curo calmly steps forward and declares that he will enter the green dungeon. Taiga, though surprised, checks in with Curo, asking if he's really okay tagging along. But Curo just brushes it off, saying he'll be fine, even joking that Taiga can buy him a beer later to make up for it. Shirou jumps in, saying they should get going. This makes Curo uneasy, so he asks if she really wants to come along. Shirou says yes, admitting she has her own reasons. She explains that she can't just sit back and do nothing, not after everything that's happened. Curo reluctantly agrees, and just as they're about to leave, Ekona runs up, begging to go with them. She insists she has insane magic skills that could be useful, but Curo stops her. He explains that this dungeon is far more dangerous than the last one, and he can't risk bringing her along. Ekona insists on helping, saying she just wants to repay them for everything. But Curo stands by his word. To soften the rejection, he changes the subject and asks Ekona if she likes fish. Confused at first, she says yes. So Curo tells her she should help add fish dishes to the pub's menu, and that he'll be looking forward to trying them when he gets back. Seeing this as a way to repay them, Ekona lights up, promising she'll whip up the best fish meal he'd ever seen. With that, she waves goodbye cheerfully, telling Curo to be careful out there. Watching her, Curo thinks about how she still doesn't see much value in herself because of her past as a slave. But he's fine with her just taking her time and getting used to her new life. Behind him, someone suddenly asks if he's going into another dungeon. Curo turns and sees Quinn sitting on a tree branch. She questions his motives, asking if he's throwing himself into more pain or trying to become a hero. Curo hesitates at first, unsure of what to say, but after thinking it through, he admits he has no interest in becoming a hero. Quinn then demands to know why. She says Taiga and his comrades were fools for even going into the dungeon in the first place to challenge the Guardian. She warns that it might already be too late to save the girl who disappeared with the beast, even if they try. But Curo insists he's going because it feels like the right thing to do, even if the odds are terrible. Before Quinn can say more, Shirou calls out, urging Curo to hurry up. When he turns back to say goodbye, Quinn has already vanished into thin air, leaving him standing alone and wondering why she keeps disappearing like that. Anyway, the team finally arrives at the green dungeon. Once inside, Curo immediately asks Taiga where the beast is, and Taiga tells him it's on the 13th floor. As they begin making their way down, they're stunned to see the place looks nothing like they expected. Instead of stone walls or ruins, thick plants and vines stretch wildly in every direction, practically swallowing the path. To make matters worse, the monsters they encounter aren't weaklings anymore, they're intermediate level, far stronger than what they faced before. Wasting no time, Shirou moves ahead and starts attacking. But the moment she spots a giant creeping bug monster, she freaks out, screaming that bugs are the only things she can't handle. So Taiga charges in and starts slicing down the bugs one after another. But he stops when he notices Curo just standing there like a dummy, not even swinging his sword despite being surrounded. Taiga yells at him, but Curo stays calm. Instead of rushing to attack, he activates his black attribute, and in an instant, every living thing around him is swallowed up and devoured by darkness. Taiga freezes, witnessing the power of the black for the first time and realizing its way beyond the normal stories he's heard. He explains that there's an ancient book that talks about the Great War between humans and demons, and in that book, there is a legendary character called the Black Hero. This Black Hero is depicted as a fair and righteous person who fights demons to protect humans, but Curo brushes it off, saying he's nothing like that. He laughs a little, admitting he only does whatever he pleases. Taiga is confused by his attitude, but then recalls that there is also another part of the story where the white hero loses her memory, while the black hero ends up losing himself. Right then, we see Curo's mental pollution stat ticking upward, showing that every time he uses his power, it chips away at his mind bit by bit. The monsters keep swarming from everywhere, even from above, so Curo calls upon his dark powers again. This time, he unleashes black burial and black spikes from nowhere start stabbing the monsters. But the enemies don't stop. They keep multiplying like rats in a dumpster, so the protagonist pushes his magic a little further by unleashing Dark Eater, and every single beast gets sent to the Shadow Realm. But right after using this dangerous power, his mental pollution spikes higher than before. As they continue their journey to the 13th floor, Shirou notices Curo's hand is wounded and offers to heal him. But Curo tries to play the hard guy, telling her not to bother. But Shirou insists and heals his hand. Surprisingly, the moment she does, Curo notices that his mental pollution number drops drastically. Shortly afterwards, the party finally reaches the 13th floor, the deepest part of the dungeon. On stepping inside, they can already feel the bad evil vibes all around. Suddenly, they see some girl sitting at the center of the room and immediately realize it's none other than Curo. She looks weak and lifeless, almost like she's in a trance. Taiga wastes no time rushing forward to get her, while apologizing for being a coward and leaving her behind. But when Curo lifts her head, her face looks like an old woman who mistook ashtrays for skincare. Taiga stops in shock, wondering what on earth is going on. And that's when a sinister voice welcomes the three of them for making it this far. The voice mocks them for their struggle, saying it had been bored out of its mind waiting. The air in the atmosphere starts to change, and Curo can feel an oppressive air in the chamber, heavier than anything he has ever experienced. The creepy voice continues, calling the place they've stepped into the palace of joy and pleasure. And from the shadows, a terrifying and twisted monster begins to reveal itself. This freaky beast introduces itself as Sagyurusu, ruler of the deep forest and violator of intruders' souls. Shocked out of his mind, Curo realizes that this monster can even speak human language. Taiga, already enraged by the sight of the monster, charges like a brainless idiot. But suddenly, wooden tendrils snake emerge out from the ground, latching onto his limbs and dragging him down. This makes the monster laugh and start mocking Taiga. It says it remembers seeing Taiga the day before and then thanks him for bringing more delicious victims this time. Just then, the ground burst open and more twisted creatures starts creeping out. Taiga is shocked beyond words to see that one of the creepy abominations is his dead former comrades, Curusu. But before he can even react, the ground explodes again, and this time it's the corrupted corpses of another ally, Hana. This makes the monster laugh manically, boasting about its creations, and then starts explaining its sick process of embedding saplings into corpses and turning them into puppets overnight. Taiga tries to reason with the puppets, shouting for his former teammates to stop. But Shirou cuts him off, reminding him they're already dead and the only person they came for is Curo. Just after saying these words, two of the twisted puppets launch straight at Shirou, forcing her to the ground. She screams in fear, but before they strike, Curo stabs them with his black blades and saves her. Taiga panics and shouts the name of his friends, but Curo explains he's just swallowing their remains with his magic, and they can worry about a funeral later. Enraged, the vine monster lashes out, sending its writhing vines at Curo. But that's when Curo activates his all-powerful move, Black Unification, which changes him into some armored knight of darkness. In his new form, Curo goes head-to-head with the beast. The fight is so intense that even the monster is surprised at Curo's legendary power of black. Curo's eyes burn with rage as he declares that anyone who plays with human lives, turning them into puppets, deserves nothing but merciless slaughter. However, with the more power he consumes, the higher his mental pollution level rises. The monster continues to attack Curo with his deadly vines, but the protagonist slashes everything. Sagyurusu, the vineful monster, is surprised, wondering who this boy is and how he can wield the power of black so naturally. The monster calls him arrogant for a human and then summons his puppets from above. Among them is Mio, Taiga's teammate. Taiga panics the moment he sees her, screaming at Curo not to attack. But too late, Curo doesn't hesitate. He summons his black burial and stabs everything on sight with black spikes. The problem is his mental pollutions just keep increasing with every attack. After taking out the ugly puppets, Curo starts thinking of how to bring down the dungeon boss in front of him. That's when Taiga shouts at him to stop. He insists they've already rescued Curo, and there's no reason to keep fighting since it's impossible to take down a guardian anyway. But Curo ignores the coward's warnings and tells him they can head back if they choose to. But for him, he is not leaving until this monster is finished. Shirou sees the crazed determination in Curo's eyes and gets scared. Before she can say a word, Curo leaps at the monster again, completely focused. But this time, the guardian laughs, noticing the anger clouding his judgment, and mocks him, saying his face looks like an ape when he is angry. And when Curo closes the distance, the monster suddenly counters, driving a brutal strike into his guts. Curo shouts in pain, and the evil menace enjoys it, saying Curo's fighting style is like that of a beast with no elegance. Curo crashes to the ground, and for a second he panics, wondering what he's even doing. But then he remembers he can't let his emotions control him. He thinks back to his revenge, all the pain and bitterness he endured. That's when he steels himself, reminding himself that he is the kind of guy who gets things done no matter what. The monster keeps taunting him, asking him to try a bit harder because he is bored to death. So Curo declares an attack called Baptism of Fire, unleashing a wave of black flames at the twisted creature. The beast staggers in the fire, shocked at the idea, admitting it was clever to try burning him down. But even while wrapped in flames, it mocks that Curo's power isn't strong enough. That's when Curo's ability twists the flames even further, recreating the monster's own power. The Guardian freezes in shock, realizing Curo copied his rotten ability. It starts trying to talk its way out, begging Curo to calm down. But Curo is way past the mood for talk, and all he wants to do right now is swing his blade while unleashing his Dark Eater. The monster gets sliced by the massive slash of dark energy, and in seconds, its twisted body gets shredded into pieces. With this powerful move, Curo's mental pollutions keep rising at an alarming rate. Meanwhile, the Guardian's body dissolves into nothing, leaving behind only fragments. Taiga screams in shock, unable to believe they actually defeated the final boss of the dungeon. But Curo quickly shuts the coward up, saying it's not over yet. Even with the monster's body gone, its bloody head twitches back to life. The head keeps talking, saying it accepts that it had been defeated by a scary human. However, it's not the end as twisted vines start bursting out of the ground again, wrapping everyone and everything in its path. Shirou can't believe what she's seeing. Even with its body gone, the beast still has this much power. The evil guardian declares that all enemies of the evil god will face only one thing: death. And immediately after that declaration, the whole dungeon starts shaking like the end is about to come. Out of nowhere, a bright light begins to form around them. Shirou and Taiga stare at this new danger with faces that scream, "What the heck?" Curo, on the other hand, stands in the middle of the dungeon, staring at this massive light, and realizes that somehow it looks like the sun itself is inside the dungeon. The monster laughs and then explains it. That glowing sun isn't just for show, it's the core of the dungeon. Plants and monsters grow under it, feeding off the light. And worse, that same sun that gives light will now be used as a weapon to grill all of them into barbecue chicken. Upon hearing this, Shirou panics, shouting that they can't stay here even a second longer. But when they try to leave, the door won't open. The monster laughs again, confirming that no one is getting out. Even if it dies, everyone inside will perish together in this cursed dungeon. But Curo calls it cap and swears the monster will be the only one dying here. He starts preparing an attack, saying they will survive. He draws on the power he absorbed earlier and unleashes another Dark Eater slash, aiming at the burning sun. But the attack fails to swallow the sun and fizzles even before it gets an inch close to it, leaving every shocked. The group realizes they don't have much time, and even if Curo keeps striking like a madman, the sun's power is overwhelming. But Curo knows he can't let up even for a second. So he pushes himself harder while thinking of alternatives, wondering if he should use water to extinguish the sun or use a dark cover to shield it. Nonetheless, Curo knows that the only way to fix this pathetic situation is to do something about this burning sun. Suddenly, his mental contamination spikes past the limit, and Curo just stays still without moving a muscle. Shirou looks at him with fear in her eyes, asking what is happening, but Curo remains still like ice fish, as if something inside him has snapped. Inside his mind, Curo finds himself in some kind of black space and wonders where the heck he is. He immediately remembers the warnings about mental contamination and wonders if this is the price of overusing his power. Suddenly, he finds himself face to face with a twisted black shape. It looks terrifying, almost alive, like it's calling to him. But then, out of nowhere, he hears someone warning him not to take another step towards the black twisted thingy. He turns to see his dead sister Toa, who begs him not to touch that thing, saying it's a terrible power that would strip away who he really is. She pleads with him to understand and to turn back. But Curo figures this isn't really his sister Toa. It's just an illusion born from his own mind. He stares at the black shadowy figure and thinks hard. If touching it means gaining the strength to stop the sun and save everyone, then maybe it's worth the risk. More than anything, he wants the chance to meet the real Toa again. So no matter what happens, he reaches out and accepts this twisted dark power. The moment he touches it, the system activates, announcing that a new skill has been unlocked. Dark escaping night. Curo finally regains his consciousness, but the terrifying dark aura surrounding him makes him totally unrecognizable. Shirou and Taiga look at him in shock, not even sure what they're seeing anymore. Curo, however, just looks at his hand, calm and steady, saying he finally understands that this is his new power now. So he reaches out and unleashes his new power towards the sun, and instantly thick black mist shoots up, swirling and spreading across the arena. This terrifying power begins to swallow the massive sun above the dungeon. Shirou and Taiga watch in shock, unable to believe what's happening. Even the Rotten Guardian panics, screaming that it's impossible, that no human should be able to create this much magic. In the next moment, the sun gets consumed and sucked into the dark void. The monster stares, horrified, calling it unbelievable. Like a crazed person, it starts to laugh bitterly, saying Curo did an amazing job getting this new power. However, it then states that Curo will die before unlocking any other color attribute. But this enemy talks too dang much, so Taiga had to do everyone a favor, smashing his head with his axe and shutting it up for good. Shirou rushes to Curo's side, fear in her eyes, asking what just happened and if he's all right. But Curo is far gone, as his mind and body have been consumed by this dark power. At this point, his mental contamination has reached an all-time high of 3.004. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon ruins, Quinn is already there and is fully aware of the everything happening inside. She thinks about Curo, remembering how she had warned him before. She knows colored attributes aren't miracle solutions, and if used the wrong way, they can ruin the user. At the same time, back inside, Curo is still unstable and still under the influence of the dark, corrupted power. Shirou and Taiga can only watch in fear, confused by what's happening. Everything should have been over since the sun is gone and Sagurus has fallen, but instead, they're facing something far worse. Curo is trapped in a haze, almost like he's being pulled deeper into madness. Curo himself starts hearing something calling out to him. He doesn't know if it's an enemy, an ally, or something else. The corrupted shadows around him even start forming shapes, confusing him even more. Suddenly, an axe emerges from the shadows and nearly hits Shirou. But Taiga grabs her and pushes her out of the way just in time. Both are stunned, realizing that even weapons can get swallowed in this dark mist, and then question why this is happening to Curo. Taiga blames himself, as he remembers the passage from the Holy Book which states that the white saint will lose her memory and the black saint will lose himself. Taiga admits he knew the black attribute was dangerous, but he stayed quiet. Now he feels guilty, realizing Curo may have truly lost himself. Shirou, however, doesn't back down. She says Curo isn't gone, just lost, and she believes she can reach him. When Taiga warns that it isn't safe, Shirou insists she has to because she is his guide in this world. Before Shirou can take another step, Taiga suddenly remembers another passage from the manuscript. It says that to regain himself, the Black Saint must be reminded of something precious. He points out that if there's any hope of bringing Curo back, Shirou might be the only one who can do it, and then pleads with her to try. With this encouragement, Shirou is even more determined to do so. So she starts walking into the swirl of dark energy. She knows if she gets hurt, Curo will blame himself, so she braces herself and pushes forward carefully. The corruption burns her slightly like an acid, but she keeps moving nonetheless. To her relief, the darkness doesn't absorb her. That tiny sign gives her hope. It means Curo is still somewhere inside, still aware of what's happening. She finally reaches where Curo is and sees the guy kneeling in the midst of this dark energy, completely gone. So she kneels right in front of him and tries calling out to him softly, telling him she knows he can still hear her. Inside Curo's mind, Curo is overwhelmed by this dark, powerful aura. That's when he hears Toa telling him she always knew he would end up using this power and that she tried to stop him. But just then, Curo also hears another voice calling out to him. This voice belongs to Shirou, who tells him that everyone is fine and the only person left to return is him. She also teases him that if he doesn't hurry up, Ekona's cooking will get cold. Slowly, pieces of Curo's memories and feelings start coming back. The walls of the mental prison finally starts to crack when Shirou reminds him not to forget that he came to this world to look for his sister, Toa. Shirou doesn't stop and continues, until she is finally able to totally shatter the mental prison when she tells him that all she wants for him is to be happy. Curo at that point starts to piece together who might be talking and is finally able to realize it's Shirou. With Curo's sanity finally restored, the black mist surrounding the dungeon begins to fade until he and Shirou are now clearly seen in the middle of the dungeon. 2 weeks pass after Curo cleared the green dungeon, and he is enjoying a brief respite when Taiga shows up for a visit. They sit to enjoy this delicious seafood that Ekona made, and while eating, Curo asks Taiga about Curara, the girl they rescued. Taiga explains he's taken her to a magic healer, a doctor who uses spells to treat injuries, and no matter how long the treatment takes, he is determined to support her till she recovers. He also mentions that he's given his fallen comrades a proper burial, and then thanks Curo again for making it all possible. Curo just nods, quietly accepting his gratitude. When Taiga asks about his mental contamination, Curo reassures him it's stable, as long as he doesn't overuse the black attribute, though he's considering seeing an expert about it. He admits he can't let something like that deadly incident happen again, since Shirou won't always be there to save him. Taiga nods, but adds that, according to the scriptures, the Black Sage will need both loved ones and comrades to fight beside him. Curo pauses for a moment, unsure whether to call Shirou a loved one or a comrade. Changing the subject, Curo shows Taiga the magic tool he obtained after defeating Sagirusu. He explains he has no intention of equipping it and plans to sell it to help with Curara's treatment. But Taiga disagrees, insisting it belongs to Curo, the one who truly defeated the enemy. He says he must handle the rest himself to honor his comrades' memories. Curo says he understands, and then Taiga stands to leave, thanking him once more and promising that next time they'll finally share that drink together. Later on, Shirou brings a box to Curo, explaining that inside contains his ceremonial cloth and insists he try it on immediately. Curo agrees, but the moment he puts it on, Shirou and Ekona nearly lose their minds, because somehow the outfit fits him perfectly, like it was tailored by destiny itself. Shirou then smiles proudly, saying the wait is over. The upcoming ceremony will finally bring him face to face with the red hero, Toa Reitsu, which is something he has been struggling for so long. All the dungeon battles, the pain, and the victories have been leading to this day. Finally, the day of the ceremony arrives. Inside a grand hall, the place is packed with nobles. Curo, all dressed in his ceremonial suit, is shocked at how expensive the whole place is. Suddenly, a four-eyed girl walks up to him, introducing herself as Purasa. She says she's heard so much about Curo and is honored to finally meet the rumored Black Hero. Curo doesn't understand what she means by Black Hero, so she explains that it's the title given to the hero in the scriptures and heroic tales. Plus, he is the first person to possess the power of black in 1,000 years, so that literally makes him the Black Hero. Purasa also tells him that in this event, he will be meeting royal families and will formally become a hero. Curo says he isn't interested, and Purasa is shocked at his humility. She laughs awkwardly and says the decision is exactly his to make anyway. Then she explains to him that becoming a hero means obtaining privileges equal to those of aristocrats. On top of that, he will be making more money than a TikToker with brand deals and no talent. Curo thinks it over, but then reasons that if there are privileges, then there must also be duties. Just then, Purasa tells him that the other heroes have arrived. She shows him a dude with a very girly face and says he is the Blue Hero. She explains that by Blue Hero, she means that the guy has more ice magic to make Sub-Zero look like a fraud. Coupled with the fact that every girl wants him because of his beautiful appearance. After that, she shows him a girl in glasses with a face that screams, "I need to get laid." She says this girl is the divine healer, and besides her combat prowess, she has insane healing skills. Without being asked, Purasa keeps talking, explaining that beside him, there are 7 heroes, and even amongst these heroes, there is a great hero who single-handedly destroyed many magic tool holders. But Curo isn't really listening anymore. He's thinking back to Quinn, who once said only she and him had colored attributes. Yet that blue hero clearly does too, which means something isn't adding up. Suddenly, an announcement is made that the red hero has arrived. Curo turns, and there she is, walking towards him with calm confidence. When someone asks why she is late, Towa Reitsu replies that she has been dealing with an annoying dungeon boss and then continues towards Curo. Curo, on the other hand, just stands there completely lost in the moment. The girl looks older, taller, but still carries a face he could never forget. As she moves closer, Curo is certain there is no mistaking that face. Without a doubt, this red hero, Towa Reitsu, is definitely his sister, Towa. A few hours later, Curo is honored by the king and officially declared a hero of the nation. Even as he kneels to receive the title, his mind isn't on the ceremony. It's on his sister, Towa, whom he just met. So after the ceremony, he meets up with her again, and this time he casually introduces himself. But Towa gets pissed, asking him to give a proper introduction and stop trying to act like they already know each other. Curo is shocked and tries to tell her it's him, Curo, but Towa has no idea who he is. This comes as a punch to the chest, as Curo finally realizes that his own sister doesn't remember him. Just then, some random attendant rushes over, saying Towa's mood has worsened, and she might need some juice to calm down. So they lead her away, leaving Curo just standing there speechless and clueless. That's when the healer from before walks up to Curo, saying she never expected him to know Towa. Curo is caught off guard, wondering if she knows something he doesn't. The healer then introduces herself as Irufi and reveals she specializes in tuning the mind. In dumb people's language, she can help people who have suffered mental trauma forget their pain. Irufi admits that Towa was once one of her patients, and Curo is shocked, speechless, hearing this. Irufi explains that when Towa was found 5 years ago, she was broken and terrified. She would wake up every night screaming from nightmares, and would spend all day crying and calling out Curo's name. Slowly, through treatment, she became stable, and when she finally asked to forget her haunting past, Irufi granted that wish by placing a lock on her memories. However, Irufi makes it clear that the lock doesn't erase memories. It just seals them away, making it impossible to remember unless triggered by something connected to her past. After Irufi explains all this, Curo starts reflecting and feels he is to blame for all this. If he had stayed with Towa that day instead of hanging out with friends, maybe she wouldn't have died. Maybe she wouldn't have suffered so much that she wanted to forget her whole life. The guilt burns him inside, and just thinking about it makes his heart want to explode. Later that night, Curo tries to compose himself at the banquet. The other heroes talk casually, but he's lost in thought, wondering if he should try to unlock her memories or let her stay as she is. Just then, Towa approaches him again. This time, however, Curo tries to maintain his composure and also apologizes for the way he acted earlier. Towa tells him it's fine, saying she isn't the type of girl to hold grudges. Yeah, Curo remembers that too well cause even in her past life. She was always a sweet girl. So the two of them start talking like strangers meeting for the first time. They even end up laughing when they realize they share almost the same birthday, and Curo jokes that it's almost like they're twins. Just watching Towa move, talk, and smile, and the fact that she isn't 6 feet under is enough for Curo. But their moment is suddenly interrupted by a loud crash. They both turn to see an arrogant blonde yelling at a waiter for mixing the wrong ingredient in his drink. The guy boasts, saying this is no way to treat a hero. Curo can't believe that even the loudmouth is also a hero, but Towa confirms it, saying the guy's name is Reiku, the Red Dawn hero. However, she warns Curo not to pay the idiot any mind, explaining that the loser is not like him. But it's already too late, as Reiku notices Curo and starts famsing, saying it's an honor to meet him. He also notices Towa's presence and starts bragging, asking if she was gossiping about him to Curo. Towa replies, not really, saying she didn't tell Curo anything untrue. Changing the subject, Reiku asks Curo if he by any chance knows a girl with white hair named Shirou. Curo nods, saying Shirou is his guide. Reiku laughs, saying, what a coincidence, because Shirou's mother was his own guide in the past. He adds that it's highly admirable how hard the daughter and mother have been working. Curo is surprised, saying Shirou never mentioned she had a mother before. Reiku grins like a villain, saying Shirou probably never mentioned her mother because, after all, he was the one who took her mother's life. Curo looks confused, unable to believe this dude actually murdered Shirou's mom. That's when Reiku explains it all. It happened 7 years ago. Back then, like everyone else, he had just reincarnated and was facing his first dungeon alone. But Shirou's mom, Kuko, who worked as a guide, insisted on tagging along. According to Reiku, both Shirou and her mother had been reincarnated after dying in a tragic accident. So Kuko took a job at a bar and doubled as a guide for newcomers. To Reiku, however, the woman was more annoying than a clingy ex with unlimited data. He remembers how she would follow him on every dungeon raid and try to boss him around. Every time he wanted to go deeper, she'd tell him to stop for the day. He hated it, so he came up with what he calls a brilliant plan to use her as bait for a magic tool holder. After getting his power, he returned to the bar, only for Shirou to come crying and begging for her mother back. So he beats her up till she bled from every opening in her face. But the guys at the bar started challenging him for his cruel behavior, so he left. Reiku ends by saying it was thanks to Shirou's mom's death that he became the hero he is today. Upon hearing all this, Curo is already boiling with rage, almost at the point of punching his useless mouth. Reiku notices the anger on his face and teases him, asking if his story hurt his feelings. Before things get out of hand, Purasa tries to calm things down, but Reiku snaps at her, warning her not to shove her nose into his business. Curo looks Reiku dead in the eyes and asks if what he said earlier about hurting Shirou was true. Reiku laughs, saying she only had a nosebleed and looked pathetic, but he found it amusing. Then he smirks, saying if Curo wants a fight, he will gladly give him one. Meanwhile, everyone around is already talking about an exhibition match between the Black Hero and the Red Dawn Hero. Toa finds the whole thing despicable, muttering that the arrogant idiot is to be blamed. Reiku prepares himself, asking Curo if he isn't going to attack him. When Curo remains silent, he says, "Fine," he will make the first move. With that, he starts summoning a powerful surge of electricity that can power an entire village. Bragging, he calls it the power of dawn, the light that consumes everything in its path. But the moment he fires it straight at Curo, our boy summons Dark Eater from the ground to counter his move. However, the pressure of the lightning is too great, and it sends Curo staggering back. Still, he's impressed to experience the power of a hero for the first time, but backing down isn't in his vocabulary. So they clash blades fiercely. Watching from the side, Irufi is fired up, shouting for Curo to crush the idiot's face. But Reiku laughs, bragging that he is level 56 while Curo is just 9, so the level difference is clear, and Curo doesn't stand a chance. Curo eventually gets overwhelmed and gets smacked to the ground. It's clear that when it comes to strength, there is no debate that Reiku is certainly strong. But Curo still has one last card to play. Suddenly, Reiku is shocked to see his clothes on fire. He tries to wave off the flame, but instead of dying down, his body gets wrapped with twisted vines. He panics, wondering what the heck is happening. But before he can even figure it out, Curo appears behind him like a shadow, asking him to use his dumb head since he is a hero. Reiku is shocked and terrified at the speed the boy is moving, but before he can even turn around, bam, his left arm goes flying. He screams, clutching the stump as blood spills. On the side, Toa is shocked, saying this is the power of black that eats up everything. But Irufi corrects her, saying nope, this is a new kind of magic. Everyone starts cheering for Curo, making him embarrassed. To shut it down, Curo quickly tells Teiku that the fight is over and then advises him to go see a healer. But Teiku's ego will not allow him, as he is already summoning a powerful nuclear weapon. Everyone starts shouting, saying it's ridiculous to use such power. They scream that he must have lost his dang mind to summon such grade A magic that can burn down an entire town. But Teiku doesn't care. He is already filled with rage, and the only thing he is thinking about at that moment is revenge. He yells that for mocking him, Curo must visit hell, and then suddenly an explosion occurs. But standing outside the venue is a mysterious girl who is drawn by all the noise coming from inside. Meanwhile inside, Reiku is ready to unleash his ultimate power. Curo is thinking, trying to work out how to counter that kind of power. He considers using the move that swallows everything in its path, but he's not sure his body can survive doing it again. With time running out, he decides he'll have to improvise and use whatever comes to mind. Just as the heat is about to spike, the mysterious girl from outside suddenly appears, standing on a tall pillar and sarcastically asking what got everyone so worked up. Toa instantly recognized this blonde girl who she calls Parufi and is shocked to see her. Everyone is equally as shocked because Parufi is supposed to be on some kind of mission. Even Curo looks confused, wondering who this showstopper is. Parufi just smirks and asks Curo if he is the black hero. Before my guy can even respond, the girl closes the distance between them in a single blink, faster than any normal eye could follow. Curo is stunned by her incredible speed and wonders if she's a hero too. But Parufi simply touches his face, admitting that she came all the way expecting more from the famous black hero, but wasn't expecting such a pitiful, ordinary face. She asks if he's more interesting on the inside, but Curo's completely thrown off, wondering what her deal is. Suddenly, someone yells, warning Parufi to stop joking about. It's the arrogant douche who swears he is still in the business of ending Curo's life, and if Parufi doesn't want to be colossal damage, she better use her speed and get lost. But Parufi just sighs, calls him a noisy fool, and in a flash she gives him a slight cut on his neck. Reiku freezes shocked at her inhuman speed, but Parufi warns that next time his neck might not stay attached. Then she turns back to Curo and asks if he can understand what her magic is. Before Curo can even respond, she begins explaining her magic. Parufi says her power is like an invisible blade of wind that can cut anything in creation. But while she speaks, Reiku is still fuming. He still wants a piece of Curo for slicing off his arm. But then his sliced-off arm starts to shine, and in a blink of an eye, his arm is restored like it never left. Reiku is confused, looking at his now restored arm like what the heck. But that's when Quinn walks in, saying she is responsible for restoring his arm, and with that everything is supposed to return to normal. Reiku reluctantly agrees, but warns Curo that even though his arm is back, he'll remember the insult. That said, he angrily walks out of the ceremony. Curo is surprised to see Quinn at the banquet, but Quinn calmly points out that he is now a hero. Meanwhile, the moment the mysterious speedy girl sees Quinn, she rushes over and hugs her, over the moon that she came. Quinn, on the other hand, doesn't seem too happy to be hugged. As if that isn't creepy enough, Irufi also jumps on Curo, excited that he put the arrogant Reiku in his place. The next day, Curo rides home in a carriage, deep in thought. He's achieved his goal, but new problems wait for him, and one of them is his sister Toa. Even though he has reunited with her, she chose to seal her memories, cutting off their past. That alone weighs heavy on him, and he wonders how he should face her now, not as her brother, but just as himself. At the same time, there's his new role as a hero. Even after accomplishing his goal to reunite with his sister, he would have to go into battle at the Nation Command. But even with all that, there's one more concern, but that's something he can't quite name yet. Later that day, Curo heads back to the ruined temple, the place where he first arrived in this world. He looks around quietly, and that's when he sees Shirou. When she asks what he's doing there, Curo explains that Vinny told him she was here, and then asks why she comes so often. Shirou explains that since people appear there after reincarnation, it's normal she checks from time to time for new arrivals, since she is the guide, after all. Putting that aside, Curo brings up what Reiku said about Shirou's mother and the past. Shirou admits she wasn't hiding it on purpose. It's just not something easy to talk about. Curo is surprised at how calm she is talking about the man who murdered her mother, and then asks if she has ever thought of terminating Reiku's life or seeking revenge of some sort. Shirou looks confused by the question. To confirm she heard right, she asks again if he means taking revenge on Reiku for her mother's death. Ruko says yes, and Shirou asks if he were in her shoes, what would he do? Curo coldly admits that if it were him, he'd do it. He explains that when someone you love is taken from you, revenge feels like the only thing that makes sense. He adds that even if the law doesn't permit it, one cannot just stay and do nothing. He then turns to Shirou, asking if she feels differently about it. Shirou smiles nervously and admits that she couldn't do it, even if she wanted to. Reiku's power is beyond her. But Curo doesn't let that excuse slide. He says that doesn't matter, she can always find another way or grow stronger. What really matters, he says, is the will to act, and if she truly wants it or not. On hearing this, Shirou falls silent, unsure of what else to say. So she starts talking about her dead mother, how kind and gentle she was. She recalls how both of them died in an accident and ended up reincarnated in this world together. Shirou was just a little girl back then, but one memory remains crystal clear. Her mother holding her tightly, shielding her from harm, doing everything she could so Shirou would live. As a woman in this parallel world, Shirou explains that her mother had to work herself to the bone just to support herself and Shirou. Shirou remembers her as someone who always helped others, no matter who they were. That kindness drew people to her, giving her strength even when times were hard. She explains that her mom's compassion inspired her, and that's why she became a guide to help others, just like her mother once did. Even after all the pain, that's the part of her mother Shirou chose to keep alive. She steps closer to Curo, saying only Reiku knows what really happened in that dungeon that day. If he really did use her mom as bait and left her to die, she can never forgive him. Still, she admits something that surprises Curo. Despite hating Reiku for what happened, she can't bring herself to end him. Because her mom, right until her last breath, was trying to protect the ingrate. That's why, she says, she'll forget about revenge, leaving Curo shocked beyond words. Later that night, Curo lies on his bed thinking about her words. He can't understand how someone could let go of revenge so easily. In his case, he knows he could never forgive. If someone he loved was taken from him, he'd get his revenge no matter what. He finds it impossible to believe that he can ever get a mindset like Shirou's. While lost in thought, his room door creaks open, and Ekona walks in carrying a tray of food, which she says is his dinner that night. Curo thanks her but immediately notices something off. She's acting weirdly nervous today. When he asks if anything is bothering her, Ekona says nothing at first. But Curo tries to make her comfortable, reminding her they're friends and she can ask him anything. So after a bit of hesitation, she blurts out her question, asking how the ceremony went. Curo's taken aback at first, but then realizes she's just curious, like a little brat excited about fairy tales. So he starts describing it, saying the hall was massive, like 100 times bigger than their bar. Ekona's eyes light up as he continues, talking about nobles wearing flashy clothes and the fancy carriages lined up outside. He also decides to tell her about the heroes he met. So he starts by describing Quinty, a mysterious woman who appears and disappears like a ghost. And then he moves to the blue hero, Rukiasu, whom he describes as a handsome gentleman who turns heads just by walking. Finally, he describes Parufindi, saying she is just a nutcase with magic. The following day, Curo heads to the royal capital. Specifically, he goes to Arufi's Divine Healing Center and notices she is out, which disappoints him since he came to ask her about his mental contamination issue. So he decides to head back, but that's when he bumps into Toa and freaks out. Curo tries to reach Arufi through his communication channel, but there's no response. Toa sighs, explaining that it's useless trying to wake Arufi, especially when she's fast asleep. She asks if there's anything else that can be done, but Curo stays silent, unsure of what to say. In his mind, he wonders why Toa is even there of all places, guessing she probably visits Arufi to check on the seal that locks away her memories. After a brief awkward silence, Toa turns back to him, asking if he also came for a checkup. Curo stammers a little before awkwardly replying, "Just a little." Toa nods and says it must be tough having a colored attribute, but reassures him that Arufi is very skilled and will give him a thorough examination. Noticing the awkward vibes, Toa suddenly offers to show Curo around the town since he just recently reincarnated. Curo, caught off guard, tries to refuse, but Toa insists that while they wait for Arufi to wake from slumberland, she will show him some interesting places. Reluctantly, Curo agrees, and now he's stuck being shown around by his amnesiac little sister. Their first stop is a high spot overlooking the city, and Toa cheerfully announces it as her favorite place, while Curo just sighs, unsure what to even say. From there, Curo spots a tall, strange-looking statue, and when he asks what it is, Toa explains that it's the statue of the Black Hero. Curo is confused here because he is supposed to be the Black Hero. Toa then explains that throughout history, 7 heroes have been written about in legends, and their statues have been made from imagination. However, she jokes that for the black hero, the statue looks more handsome than the real deal. Curo gets embarrassed, but Toa just laughs and insists they keep moving. As they walk, Curo reflects on how the moment seems so natural. His sister hasn't changed a bit, and just like she was back on Earth, she is still as wild and cheeky as ever. The whole experience of strolling together just feels like he has gone back to the past, when they used to walk back home from school. He notices Toa walking a bit too fast and shouts for her to wait up, then reaches out to hold her hand so they don't get separated. But Toa gets all defensive and then slaps his hands away like his hands stink. Curo is shocked by her reaction and gets all emotional, but Toa quickly apologizes, saying she didn't mean to hurt his feelings. She explains that she just has a hard time being around men, but admits it's strange. Being near him feels oddly easier, and she doesn't know why. Curo stays silent, unable to find the right words. Inside, though, he's troubled. He wonders if the trauma of her death that day still haunts her even after her memories were sealed. He remembers what Irufi said before, that the seal isn't perfect, and realizes that maybe touching her hand triggered fragments of her lost memories. Unsure what to do, he decides to keep a bit of distance from her for now. Sometime later, they return to the clinic, and thankfully, the sleepy healer is finally awake. Irufi stretches and admits she was in the middle of a good dream, then tells them to get started. Curo, meanwhile, can't help but notice how much hotter she looks than before, which throws him off for a second. Still, he gets down to business and explains his problem, the mental contamination that's slowly eating away at his mind. Irufi listens carefully and then admits that there are numerous issues surrounding colored attributes that even she is unaware of. However, she asks to know the details. Curo explains that this mental contamination is like a strange feeling that controls his body to the extent of making him lose his sense of self. After hearing his explanation, Irufi warns him to avoid overusing his power, or he will lose control over his body completely. She explains that of all colored attributes, the black and white have been observed by users to have similar dangerous drawbacks. And even worse, using this colored magic and trying to draw excessive power will only worsen the symptoms. Sadly, she says, there's no known cure. However, he can stop it from degenerating by avoiding overuse of his black powers. But if it occurs, he can only stop it temporarily by focusing on the things precious to him. Curo nods, but then changes the topic, asking if it's safe for him to be close to Toa, or if being near her might reopen her sealed memories. Irufi explains that forgetting trauma doesn't erase the scar, it only hides it. In Toa's case, those scars still exist deep in her soul. She warns that spending time with her forgotten brother will eventually unlock her sealed memories, but if Curo disappears, the scars will remain forever. Just then, Toa walks in, and Curo quickly stands to leave. But before he goes, he gathers his courage and asks if they can get to know each other better. Deep down, he's already made his decision. He's not going to disappear from her life again. Even if she never remembers him as her brother, he'll protect her all the same. This time, he's determined not to lose her again. Meanwhile, somewhere far away in a luxurious mansion, Reiku can't sleep. He keeps replaying the moment his arm got sliced off by Curo. Every time he thinks about it, his blood boils. Enraged, he yells at the 3 clapping chicks in his room to get out. As they scramble away, Reiku clenches his fists, swearing he'll never forgive that black-haired punk, and no matter what it takes, he'll get his revenge. Are you eager to see if Reiku gets his desired revenge? Comment Black Power if you're hyped to see what happens next in Part 2. If you enjoyed this video, drop a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, as always.